I'm actually pretty impressed with the stack of books I got through in February, considering it's the shortest month of the year. I am always proud when I make a good dent in my shelves or books I want to read, and I read quite a bunch of bangers this month. If I'm gonna be honest here, I read some good books this month. And my most read genre was fantasy romance, which seems to be a trend lately. I've been really on a fantasy romance kick. But let's get right on into the books this time. I started the month off with a fantasy romance classic, The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. This is a prequel novella to the Throne of Glass series that people argue whether you should read first or third, and it's all just a matter of preference. My preference is third, I think, now that I've read it, or honestly not at all, but like, I haven't read the rest of the series, so I probably shouldn't commit to the not at all yet, but that's the way I'm leaning. I did give this one 3 stars. I liked it, I didn't love it, and I don't think it truly brings that much to the series as a whole and like the plot of the series. It does bring a lot of character development to Selena, so if you are someone who like loves to like live and breathe with their characters, I would recommend picking this up, but if you're like me and a lot more plot driven, I truly didn't think this was necessary. This really just introduces you to Selena as a character, what happens to her before Throne of Glass starts, and how her mindset is what it is in Throne of Glass. This is written as 5 short stories that are a linear timeline and they flow into each other. You pick up one after the other after the other. Like, they are just like a story. I wish this was written in a regular narrative format. I didn't love the idea of the 5 short stories because they felt very repetitive at times. So if you finished story 1 and then you went directly into story 2 did recap things that happened in story 1, but I had just read them. It almost felt like reading book 2 of a series that you've been waiting a year for after reading book 1. So like there's that recap in book 2, but because you're reading this in a bind up back to back, it felt very unnecessary, and I wish it had just been one whole story because I think it could have worked that way as well. Truthfully, I just felt very average about this one. I'm excited to dive back into the actual series of Throne of Glass, but I think this was not really it for me. But I think that if you're a character person, pick this up. And after that, I read The Sword by J. Bree, which is a little short story that I thought I'd actually read, but it turns out I only gotten 50%. But before picking up The Crown of Oaths and Curses, you do need to read these prequel novellas. I actually do think that they are very necessary. They kind of introduce you to the backstory before what happens in this story. They introduce you to the characters, and there's a lot of world building and things that happen within those stories that make this more enjoyable. I'm not a big fan of the fact that you have to do that. I personally think that if you're not making it part of the actual series, it really shouldn't be mandatory and should just be add-on and additional benefits for people who want it, but shouldn't be required to make you enjoy the real series. I did give The Sword 4 stars. So the scepter follows the female POV in this, and the sword follows the male POV in this. I think this really introduces you to Soren's mindset and really makes you feel for where his journey begins in this one. So I really liked The Sword, and I would really recommend it, especially if you're thinking about starting the series. Please read The Sword and the Scepter first. You read the Scepter first, and then The Sword happens, and then A Crown of Oaths and Curses. Right after that, I did pick up A Crown of Oaths and Curses, and I gave this one 5 stars. I had the time of my life with this story. This is long, and after you read the 2 novellas, it feels even longer. But I flew through this. I could have read another 100, another 200, another 300 pages in this world. I was just eating it up, wanting every little bit of interaction. This is a true enemies to lovers. Our 2 POVs, Soren and Rook, are fated to be together. They are essentially told by the fates that they have to be together, and if they don't listen to the fates and what the fates tells them, there are really big consequences. However, Rook has ran away from this. She was like, I cannot be fated to this man because Soren is the Prince of Fays, and he has spent his entire life hunting down the witches to kill them all because he thinks the witches have cursed the Fae. And of course, Rook is a witch. And so she's like, I can't be with someone who's hunting down my kind, and she runs away from her fate, but eventually she comes back and realizes that she has to do it, and the world will be a better place if she just accepts her fate. And the story starts, and we watch these 2 interact, and they literally hate each other. Like, could you imagine being told that you had to be with someone who's hunted down your kind, and that you had to be with someone that you've been hunting their kind down because you think they've cursed you? Like, what? This story will not work for everyone because the characters are so freaking frustrating, and there is a very lack of romance in this first book. I think you see tidbits of it. However, really these characters are stuck in their prejudice. They have a lot of prejudice, a lot lot of hate for each other's species, and you really clearly see it, and you are frustrated by them because you can see how they are wrong. You can see through the wall and into the final battlegrounds. They cannot, and it is so freaking frustrating, but I love being frustrated like that, and I think when these two finally get together, there's literally no romance in this book. They will be perfect and incredible and amazing, and I really loved the world building in this. The history between the witches and the fays and the magic and the war and the goblins, like everything felt so enriched and well thought out. I really liked this one. After that, I read A Crown This Cold and Heavy, which is the third book in the A Court This Cruel and Lovely series by Stasia Stark. I gave this one 3 stars. I continue to really like this series. I think it's a fun time series. However, this one lacked some of the romance that I loved in book 1. In this third book, it is very plot heavy. And I do like a lot of plot with my romance. However, the plot took too much of a forefront, especially after the plot took a forefront in book 2, that I was really missing the romance in this. And any of the romance scenes were smut. And I really just wanted the characters to interact with each other, but not in a sexual way. I missed their moments of them just talking quite a bit in this one, and that's honestly why I got a 3 instead of a 4, because the actual plot of the story is a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I think that it is a really good, easy read. I really like the audiobook narration. I'm really excited to see what happens in the 4th book and see how everything ends up, so I definitely would recommend this series as well. After that, I read The Stowaway, and I give this book 5 stars. This is a thriller that borders on a horror. I think it's written in the fast-paced style of a thriller. However, it is darker and deeper and gorier than most thrillers are and leans a little bit more horror in that way. I really had fun with this. This follows our main character, Maria, who was a juror in a really bad serial killer case. She actually was the juror who made the final decision and could not say that this man was guilty, so he gets off. A few years pass by and she's on a cruise, and murders start happening that look an awful lot like that serial killer, and she is the only one on board with intimate knowledge of the case, so she has to figure out if it's the guy she let off, a different guy completely, or just a copycat, and before time runs out, and everybody dies. I thought this was just a lot of fun. There is some suspending of disbelief in this because the killer can do some outrageous things. However, I didn't care because I felt like the pace of this was just unputdownable. But after that, I did read The Jade Setter of Janloon. This is a little short story novella set within the Greenbone Saga world. We follow a jade setter who is essentially someone who puts the jade into weapons, earrings, whatever it is for the Greenbones. And when one of the higher people in power, one of the clan leaders of one of the Greenbone clans, comes and gives them a knife to put some more jade into, that knife gets stolen, and our main character has to figure out who did it before the clan leader comes back wanting their weapon, realizes it's missing, and kills them. If you are just wanting to be back in the Greenbone Saga world, I think that you will really love this. This is Fonda Lee. Her writing is incredible. Her tone in the Greenbone Saga world is incredible. The world building is really good. However, this felt very useless to me. I didn't need it. I really shouldn't have read it. I just am not someone who needs these like little character interactions, these little character moments. I don't really truly love fantasy short stories. They just always feel kind of useless. I am someone who likes a more epic scaled plot, so this just wasn't it for me. But if you're looking to just be back within the Greenbone Saga world, pick this up because it did feel like it fit that very nicely. Then I read This Is Where We Talk Things Out by Caitlin Marceau, and I gave this 5 stars as well. I do love me a horror short story is what I've learned. Fantasy doesn't work for me, but horrors, they pack a punch. They can be so creepy, so weird, and so like entertaining, but full of like nuance and deep discussions that I really enjoy. This one follows our main character whose family is very estranged, and when her father dies, her relationship with her mother just gets worse. Her mother does reach out though and asks her to go to a cabin for a weekend, and she says yes in order to bridge that gap once more before her wedding. When she gets to the cabin, she realizes her mother is still living in the past, and if she's not careful, she'll be sucked right into the past too. And this conversation on grief, on gaslighting, on mother-daughter relationships and childhood trauma and things like that was very good in this. I thought this was really interesting and it really kept me on my toes. I definitely would recommend this if you're looking to try a short horror ever. And then I read Never Die by Rob J. Hayes, and I was so let down by this. I have loved almost every Rob J. Hayes I have read. He is one of my favorite authors. This just wasn't it for me. I gave this one 2 stars. This is a standalone in the Mortal Techniques world, so these are a series of standalones. This is the first standalone technically, and Pawn's Gambit is the second. I have read Pawn's Gambit. I gave Pawn's Gambit 4 stars. I wish I had started with this one. I think I would have liked this a little bit more if I had started with it. However, I still think Pawn's Gambit is the stronger of the two. They just have very similar concepts to them with different motivations on why those concepts happen. In this one, we're following our main character who is set to kill the Emperor, but in order to do that, he has to bring back heroes from the past. So he goes on search for his heroes, he kills them, and he brings them back to life in order for them to go kill the Emperor for him. It is a lot of traveling. We are going from one place to find our hero, to battle that hero, to kill that hero, to bring that hero back to life, to then go find the next, and repeat the process until we finally go battle the big bad. I don't love it. It felt very repetitive, it felt very boring, and I did not love the characters. I feel like they ran together, they didn't stick out to me, and there wasn't enough world building in this, or like talk about the mortal techniques and what that meant. I think Pawn's Gambit does a similar traveling story, but a lot better, with a lot more explanations and a wider perspective on the world, and with much more interesting characters than this one did. So yeah, this was just a very sad letdown for me and was a 2 star. After that, I read Slaying the Shifter Prince. I was very scared to pick this up. I did not think I was going to like a bully romance. I have never tried a bully romance before, but decided to try this because I love the cover, and I really wanted to try the entire Slaying like Mortal Enemies to Monster Lover series. Because I've previously read from Claire Sager and not loved it, I really didn't think I was going to love this. However, I do know that Claire Sager's writing is strong. It's just always been a story that didn't work for me. This really worked for me. I give it 4 stars. This is a smutty good time. We're following our main character who has spent her last 10 years of her life set on one thing: revenge. When it's finally time for her to take her revenge, she pulls a knife on the Shifter Prince and gets caught. The Shifter Prince then says, "Your life is forfeit, your life is mine, and I shall take you as a pet." And then he takes her back to her castle, makes her do a lot of pet-like things. She fights back. She is feisty. The way that she pushes him as much as he pushes her, I really loved their dynamic together. I thought it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed their like moments of like really tempting each other to make a decision that was different than they wanted to make, and like really tried to push each other off the edge. And I thought it was really well done. And honestly, I really liked the smut in this, and I'm not typically a smut person, but I thought it was creative, I thought it was fun, and I had a really good time with it. Overall, I really enjoyed this one. I do wish there had been a little bit more plot. I think the ending of this is where the plot really comes into play, and the plot felt a little rushed, and like the ending thing that happens between the couple felt a little out of place to me. However, overall, I thought this was a lot of fun, and I really, really would recommend it if you're into a bully romance. Maybe if you like Zodiac Academy, try this one. I haven't read Zodiac Academy, so take that with a grain of salt, but yeah, I enjoyed this. Next up, I tried The Writing Retreat. This is another thriller. I really enjoyed this as well. I was not expecting to, because everyone talks about how unhinged this is. Turns out I like unhinged thrillers. This reminded me of No Exit in the way that it's just very twisty. Like, there's a lot of twists that come out. I do wish the first half of this book had been a little bit shorter. I think the pacing in the first half is slower than the pacing in the second half. I didn't love the first half as much, but the second half was 5-star vibes for me, so I ended up giving this one 4 stars. In this, we're following our main character, who has all but given up on her dreams of being a writer. When she gets admittance to the writing retreat, which is a retreat hosted by her favorite author, she goes and soon learns that things are not all that it seems. One of their fellow authors goes missing in a snowstorm, and our main character has to figure out what exactly is going on before the end of the retreat. I just like truly had a wild ride with this one. I thought it was a lot of fun. If you're looking to just like pick up a book and have a good time, pick this one up. Just like, I don't know, I would definitely try from this author again. I think the writing was really strong, which is good because it is a writing retreat. There is a little form of mixed media in this, and I didn't love that just because I felt like the novel being written within this novel was not very strong, but I understand the point of it. And overall, yeah, I just had a good time with this, and I was not expecting that because I have all but given up on thrillers. I was like, thrillers, they're not for me. me. And then now I think I'm gonna pick up thrillers that people really recommend to me. I think I like a more fast-paced, a little twisty. I don't really like a psychological thriller, so I think I'm really going to just ask for recommendations and take the recommendations people give me. After that, I picked up The Tent by Keelan Patrick Burke, which is just another little like short story novella that's a horror book. I have read from Keelan Patrick Burke before and I really enjoyed his work. He has a very like weird tone to his stories that I really enjoy. However, it didn't really work for me in this one. I gave this 3 stars. It was still weird. It felt like a Keelan Patrick Burke, but in all his other stories, there was a message that the weirdness enhanced. In this one, to me, the message and the weirdness were completely separate, and I just really wish that they were entwined a little bit better. This was just something. I don't even know how to explain this. In this, we're following a family who, in order to save their marriage, they go on a camping trip, they get lost in the woods, and then the couple realize their son has gone missing. They spend the night searching for their son, and they end up stumbling upon a tent. And that's all I can tell you. It gets really weird from there, but there is a lot of like domestic arguments in the first half of this as well, that I don't really love domestic thrillers or domestic horrors as much. I think I'm learning that. And after that, I was feeling more weird, and I picked up Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I only read the like first story in this. I didn't read like the other stories, and this book broke me. This is the most effed up weird book I've ever read. I was reading this book and I was just like, what in the world am I reading? The clips of me reading this in the 72-hour vlog are hilarious in my opinion, and were just like my actual reactions. Like I just was filming my reactions because I knew that this book was going to be disturbing. I do personally prefer my books to have more of a message than this book does. I gave this 4 stars. If it had had that message and that conversation, I think it could have gotten 5 stars. But this is clearly effed up to be effed up. It is looking for a guttural reaction from you, and that's pretty much it. It did get that reaction for me, and I love when a story can give me a reaction like that. So I did give it 4 stars. But I do wish there was a little bit more to this story. I really can't tell you much about this. We're following 2 characters who meet online and what that means for the 2 of them. If you're looking to be disturbed, pick this one up. I promise, it's fun time. And my last book of the month was Slaying the Shadow Prince by Helen Schuer, and I gave this 5 stars. I'm loving this Slaying series. This is a set of 5 standalones that are just all mortal enemies to monster lovers. They're not even set in the same world, but it was just a way to connect us to other authors. And so far, the premises of these, the concepts of these have really been working for me. I mean, I love an enemies to lovers. I would say that this is Reluctant Allies to Lovers, a little less enemies to lovers. We're following 2 characters. We're following Talamir, who is a war sword. This is essentially an elite warrior in this world. The thing is, in his last battle, he came in contact with the enemy, which are Shadow Wraiths, and he was actually turned half Shadow Wraith. He's keeping this from everyone, but when he meets Drew, who is a female, who's not supposed to be a warrior, because females are not allowed to wield swords in this world, but clearly is, she figures out right away what he is, and she wants to kill all the Shadow Wraiths because they killed her family, besides her dad. And so they do try to kill each other, but they soon realize they have to work together because they have the same end goal. They want to kill the Shadow Race. So they work together, they slowly fall in love, and I loved every second of this. Again, I think the smut was really good in this. I really liked the plot in this one. I think there was a decent amount of plot compared to some of the others I've read in this series. And truly, I just ate these 2 characters up. I love a feisty MC. I love a female who is gonna give it back to the man. And I love a man who's gonna give it back to the girl. I love a teasing relationship. And I really, truly loved what these 2 had. I'm excited to see them in hopefully further books within this world, because this is set in the same world as the Blood and Steel series. We actually see the main character of that series in this book, and I loved him, so I'm very, very excited to see where this whole world goes. I cannot wait to pick up Blood and Steel. Honestly, I had such a great reading month. I gave out 4 5 stars. That's insane. I do not give out that many 5 stars on the regular, so I'm shocked. It's incredible. It's amazing. What a great month. And if you need a refresher, these are the 5 stars that I've read. I would love to know what your favorite read of this month was. Let me know down below. And if you are interested in seeing my thoughts on most of these, I have a 72-hour vlog where I read almost all of these, and you can see my thoughts in real time right here on the screen.